Hello, I'm back. Today we're going to look at what exactly went wrong this season for Edinburgh. You can see here I'm wearing my last season's away Edinburgh shirt, a shirt with a colour that I very do much like, but shirt colour doesn't mean anything in terms of league standing, and Edinburgh's league standing was abysmal. Um, you know, they went from being in 7th last season and in the quarter final giving Stormers a good run for their money to being 12th. Which for a team that went from its first season under a new coach to its second and last, because Mike Blair is leaving, we're yet to know who's taking over, but I'll discuss that later on. But it's meant to be improvement, not backwards improvement. So this season compared to last, Edinburgh scored 16 less points and 4 less wins. Now, I can tell you those 4 less wins, and they were against 4 teams who are in the top 8 this season. 4 teams who are all kind of big, challenging games. So last season, Edinburgh beat Bulls, Sharks, Glasgow, and Connacht. They did not. They lost to all of them. Glasgow twice this season. Now Edinburgh did lose to Glasgow once last season, but they beat them on the home leg where they lost to them on both legs. But Edinburgh, yeah. So they lost 4 games, and I think those were the 4 main games. I think they lost to Ospreys last season and beat them this season. And I think they may have pulled something with Benetton as well, where they lost to Benetton once this season and beat them both times last season. So I can't exactly remember, but something like that. And so you've got to kind of look and go, what exactly went wrong? What part of the game is lacking this season compared to last season? And looking at some of the stats, their attack was actually better this season. They scored 466 points this season in the URC. Compare that to 421 points last season. They scored 70 tries this season. Compare that to 55 tries last season. There is a noticeable difference there. 15 tries and about 40 odd points. So there is a difference. And that can be explained, and how you'd look at that if you just looked at the Tigers and go, oh, they had a much better season this season. They scored quite a lot more tries. Noticeably, both times they got 8 try bonus points. It's just this season they did get more bonus points this season, getting 6 losing bonus points compared to only 4 last season. But they won 4 more games than they did last season, so it doesn't really count out. But where they really dipped off is their defence. This season, they conceded 467. I can't talk. 467 points they conceded this season. So they actually had a points difference of -1, which I find slightly funny, but still. And they conceded 62 tries this season. So quite a few more penalties than tries conceded, because they scored 8 more tries, but yet conceded more points. So I don't know I couldn't find any stats for penalties last season. They conceded 199 this season. I couldn't find anything for last season because the URC stat website doesn't seem to really cover last season. It only does this, and I don't know. If I find any external things, I'll make sure to put it in. But compare that to last season, they conceded 318 points and 37 tries. That's a much bigger difference in points scored to points conceded. They conceded 149 more points and 27 more tries this season than they did last season. Compare that to them scoring only 45 more points and only 15 tries more this season compared to last season. Now that obviously you think that the goal kicking might have something to do with that, because 45 more points is nowhere near 15 more tries. 45 more points is 7 more tries. So you're missing about half the number of points you should have, which makes me think that they were not kicking anywhere near as much, which does make a little bit of sense, thinking that they were without their main goal kicker in Boffelli for a lot of time this season, and relying on the likes of Kinghorn to kick, and I don't think he's at the level he should be for kicking. I don't think he's a test level 10. I know he's got the attacking flair, but I think his game management's poor. And I'm glad Edinburgh are bringing in Ben Healy next season. Hopefully he helps all that. And with combined of Healy at 10 and Boffelli at 15, the kicking might be slightly better. Because I don't think either winger can kick. And Darcy Graham or Duhan van der Merwe will both really be fond of kicking. And I know Mark Bennett did try and kick, which actually did lose Edinburgh the game up in Bulls in the second round this season. They did score more tries. They scored 5 tries, where Bulls only scored 4, but Edinburgh just couldn't kick the points Bulls did, and Bulls won by 1 point, I believe was 34-33, I want to say. But yeah, I mean, fair play to Bulls. They took their chances and they kicked. Edinburgh didn't. But you've got to think, with a better goal kicker, Edinburgh should have won that game, and they just didn't. And I think that there's been several games that season that slip in my mind at the minute. Another noticeable poor game from Edinburgh. They did win this one, but they scored a last-minute try to beat Zebra, who haven't won a game this whole season in both Europe and the URC, I think. Definitely the URC, I think Europe as well, which says a lot that you need to score a last-minute try at home to beat them. I was celebrating that try, but I was also slightly embarrassed that I was celebrating that try. And yeah, what Edinburgh need to do next season to build on, hopefully put this season behind them, focus on next season. They've got a proper test level 10 in Ben Healy coming in, who has proven himself for Munster that he is at the level Edinburgh need a 10 at, who's also starting to get integrated with Scotland, was in the training squad for the Six Nations and even managed to get some game time against Italy at the end, which means that he will probably already have a little bit of chemistry with some of the players, especially some of the bigger international names. They've also got to focus on their defence, definitely. And also, it's hard to tell because we don't know at this point who the head coach is going to be. So it can be quite difficult to know. I don't actually know any big coaches out there at the minute who are in need of a job and who would take the Edinburgh job. Steve Diamond did come in as a kind of consultant to Mike Blair, but he turned around a couple of months ago and said that he doesn't actually want the job, which doesn't say good things. I think the coaching setup isn't the best. But you'll never know that. They won't tell you that from the club, and that'll be kept secret. But you've just got to look. They're losing quite a lot of, I don't want to call it dead wood, but players who probably should have had more game time, but just haven't, and probably should be moved on for their own good, because they're good players. You've got Jaco van der Walt, Damien Hoyland, Henry Immelman. Some of them are brilliant players. They're just moving on because either Edinburgh are better or they're just not used. Jaco van der Walt, I don't know why we were playing Kinghorn at 10 ahead of him. That, I think, was a massive fault of this season, not playing Jaco van der Walt. I think he did get injured for a while, but so was like half the team. So I don't quite understand why he wasn't played. I don't know if it was something to do with Scotland's setup and that Kinghorn was forced to play at 10, which for Scotland, but yet again, I still don't see that because Scotland have one of the best 10s in the world in Finn Russell. So why would you play Kinghorn? And then bench what I think is a pretty decent 10 in Jaco van der Walt, and now he's leaving. I mean, yes, I know Ben Healy's coming in, as I've said several times, but I would have liked to have seen both kind of fighting it out with each other for that starting point and keep Kinghorn probably as a backup back three player. I don't think he gets anywhere near Edinburgh's back three. I don't think many players in the world would get near Edinburgh's back three. I think they've got one of the best back threes in club rugby in Duhan van der Merwe, Darcy Graham and Emiliano Boffelli. But Kinghorn on the bench, he can cover 15, he can cover wing. He could do a job at 10 for 10 minutes if we needed him to at the end of a game if the 10 gets injured and the game's already decided whether that Edinburgh's massive in front or massive behind. Kinghorn could come on and just control the game a bit. Well, he can't control the game, that's his problem, but do a job at 10. And I wouldn't be surprised if he can do a job at centre either. But I think, again, Edinburgh's got good centres. They've got a stacked team. Even with players coming in, you think, oh, maybe there's been a big player movement and some big names have gone. Like, yes, okay, some big names went at the end of last season, but they've had some massive names coming in. You've had the likes of Sam Skinner, Wes Goosen, and Duhan van der Merwe, to name a few coming in this season. I think that's where, especially with Goosen and van der Merwe, who I know both haven't really played that much this season through whatever reason, injury mainly, and international in terms of Duhan. But both massive attacking threats. But it's the defence that let them down. Last season I prided Edinburgh on their defence. I thought they had some of the best defence in the league. Another area of concern that I poked out that I didn't write down the stats for is they had a poor line-out this season. Their scrums were good. They were one of the best in the league with the scrums in terms of scrums won, but line-outs have been poor. Whether that's down to overthrows or knock-ons or whatever, just the line-outs have been poor. I did notice that. And restarts. All three major men's Scottish teams in the national team, Glasgow and Edinburgh, aren't very good at restarts. Glasgow's okay at them. Edinburgh's meh at them. Scotland were for a while. I know they were better in the Six Nations, but they have had issues, especially back in the autumn. They had issues with their restarts, and I think the issues are all through. Same with the lineouts. You look towards the end of that France game when Scotland had a chance to beat them. They had a line out deep into the French half. You think they've just scored 3 tries. They look like they're fighting back. Some of the big scorers like Finn Russell, Stuart Hogg, Duhan van der Merwe, they've all primed up, ready. They're ready to strike, and they lost the line out, and France ended up going down the other end and scoring late to deny Scotland anything from that game. Well, I think that if they threw that line out better, rumbled through a couple of aces, Scotland may well have scored and won the game. But, there's no point dwelling on it because they didn't. Well done, France. You won the game. That's all I can really say. Well done. But we're not talking about Scotland. We're talking about Edinburgh. But I'm just showing an example of how I think the issues are all over Scottish rugby on a whole, not just Edinburgh. I think Glasgow's line-out and discipline, as well as Edinburgh's and Scotland's, was poor this season. And I will probably do a Glasgow deep dive, and I think how much better it was, because they went from 8th to 4th. That's what Edinburgh should have done. Kind of that level of jump, coming from here to here. I wanted Edinburgh challenging for those top 4, but they just didn't. They've challenged for bottom 4, and were blooming well winning. They were second bottom for a while. But let's just hope for better time next season. If you have any other opinions, or you think anything else, or want to talk about anything rugby related, put it down. I'm happy to have the debate. I love having debates. Please let me know. Until next time, see you later.